digital transformation is hard. It is very, very hard, and you've got to have a lot of tenacity to go through it. But it's at the same time, I think it's something that's essential,
right?
That businesses need to do.
This is Velocitize Talks, and I'm Andy North. I'm joined today by Tansel Adacan, Global Systems Director at Landor. Tansel, thank you for being here.
Pleasure to be here.
So tell us a little bit about Landor and about your experiences and your background and where you see Landor differentiating from some of its competition.
So Landor is a strategic brand consultancy. They've been around now for over 75 years, originally founded by a guy called Walter Landor. And there's a big history around the Klamath, which is the boat, the logo that you see on a lot of Landor's work. And the reason why is because that was Landor's headquarters. Mm-hmm. And they did some really great work there with like some major clients such as Coca-Cola, Levi's and so forth. A lot of the great brands that you see today, a lot of the original thinking came from there. So that's a big part of our culture. Landor helped clients with things like, how does a brand look? How does it feel? How does it, how does it talk? What's the vision like? And
so the whole brand experience.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I joined Landor in December 2015, literally just as the big digital transformation was taking place. And, I've seen a lot of stuff during that time. Mm-hmm. I'd say definitely, well, first of all, starting off with digital transformation, it's, what does it affect? There's three major parts. One is people, mm-hmm. One is culture, another is technology. And in terms of the business itself, you've got to look at things like the customer experience, the operations, and the business model. Talking about digital transformation, why do we need to go through this process? A lot of things actually were being changed in parallel, and I think that was one of the major challenges. So I suppose looking from an operational standpoint, we were looking at, for example, all of our infrastructure, all of our applications, things like our processes in terms of like joiners, movers, and levers processes, and so forth. So from a strategic standpoint, it involves collaboration, communication, your innovation, compliance, security, all of these things. So by going through a digital transformation, it's how can we essentially optimize all of these areas. Mm-hmm. And so throughout the process, I learned I'd say some major things. That is, first and foremost, you absolutely must have your leadership on board. Right. Without any leadership or even just sponsorship in general, things are not going to happen. Even if you've got the best ideas, you need people to drive them, and I find that definitely should come from the top. The second thing is you need to have absolute clear strategic focus, such as what is it we're trying to achieve, and how can we measure it. For us, again, it was things like communication, collaboration, cost optimization, and so forth. So really optimizing the business to deliver maximum value to the end client. Mm-hmm. And then the third thing is, the third major lesson I learned is definitely digital transformation is hard. It is very, very hard, and you've got to have a lot of tenacity to go through it, but it's at the same time, I think it's something that's essential, right? That businesses need to do. And another thing is, we were still figuring out things as we were going through the journey, such as for instance, when it comes down to collaboration and communication, I think it was about a year and a half ago, Microsoft released Teams. Mm-hmm. And that completely changed a lot of the direction of it, because we were originally looking at things like Yammer and Slack and so forth. And so, it's knowing that throughout digital transformation, it's a journey, and that you should always be willing to adapt and reevaluate as you're going through that journey. And in terms of the business objectives, there are three areas that it benefited, I'd say, majorly. Mm-hmm. The first being, and in no particular order, one Landor. That is that we want the whole company to work as one, as
Right.
opposed to each office operating separately. And again, by leveraging collaboration tools and so forth, it helps to do that. The second thing being that we need to embrace tech. If we don't, there's a good chance the business could die.
Right. Very severe consequences.
Absolutely. And so by going through digital transformation, we are now using some of the same technology as some of the best companies in the world. So things like cloud computing, Amazon Web Services, IBM Cloud, as Microsoft Azure, and we're looking at WP Engine as well and so forth. So definitely that has given us, I'd say, an edge in the marketplace. And the final thing is that there is a focus on new business and existing clients. And by going through digital transformation, I'd say again, it's definitely given us a competitive edge because as part of our brand consulting, we're helping to consult clients that are going through digital transformation, so that we're going through this ourselves.
Lessons learned.
Exactly. We understand what we're preaching. So.
You mentioned two things that actually piqued my interest when you were talking about what it affected. You mentioned people and culture. Now, you wouldn't necessarily think, particularly on the technical side of a digital transformation, that it would impact a culture, but it sounds like it really has.
Absolutely.
How so?
I think it's really because we're going from a mindset of kind of working individually to working together. And I think, you can have the best technology ever, but if you're not kind of, working together on achieving these objectives, it's just not going to work. So it's going from a company where, many years ago, each office would operate differently. Now we're working together on major clients, both within Landor and across the group.
Right.
And so definitely, I think there's been a cultural change there, and a positive one.
So I applaud you. That was much more than just giving them the tools and saying, this is how we transform. It was, here are the tools. This is the bigger picture. This is how we want to operate from now going forward, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some of the benefits, opportunities, and challenges that you've seen with moving everything to the cloud? It's a general rush across the world to move things to the cloud, and you've obviously done that and have a lot of experience with that. What are some of the lessons you've learned?
Some of the benefits we've seen. So again, when I started, traditionally everything was on servers housed on premises. A lot of legacy stuff going on there, and by leveraging the cloud, we now we have agility, scalability, robustness, and we leverage all the same benefits that our competitors do as a result of that. In terms of the lessons learned, I'd say any company that's going through a migration, when they're migrating any legacy apps, ideally, one, they should at least have a cloud partner or provider that they migrate to. The second thing is that any apps, they should seek to do something called containerize them, which is use something called Docker or Kubernetes. And the benefit there is then you can essentially lift and shift those apps without any dependencies on any operating systems. It just makes it far easier to move them across. And I'd say the third thing is again, sometimes in migrations things could go wrong, and I think that's just a part of it. So for example, especially if you're migrating legacy apps with thousands of lines of code, you can do all the preparation in the world, but sometimes things are going to go wrong. It's just, you've got to be able to adapt and just jump on it as soon as you find out. And the last thing I'd say is, I suppose this is more of a challenge on a departmental level and on a personal level, is when you go through migrations, you can do a lot of work behind the scenes, but the business doesn't necessarily see that. And I think there's a bit of a challenge communicating those benefits to the business. A lot of our applications now sit all on the cloud, but it's still the same application when it was on premises.
Right.
I suppose it's just I try to communicate those in ways such as, we're a lot faster now. If you need any services set up, we can do it instantaneously. We don't need to call an engineer on site now, and the fact that we can do things cheaper as well. I always make sure I get that to the CFO. So yeah.
I was about to ask you about talking to a finance person, and they think that's great, Tansel, that's great, everything works, but how is that going to save us money? So you have to be able to interpret that for them as well.
Exactly.
I'm assuming.
Exactly. Yeah.
In one of your earlier jobs, you managed an innovation lab. Talk a little bit about that. What was your role? What did the lab do? How did that? What intrigued you about that position?
Sure. So, well, actually, we managed. We did a lot of innovation again at Landor, and I find, there's a lot of noise about innovation. Let's do this, but I think innovation, it comes from a few things. One is you've got to do a lot of prototyping, and I think you just got to be prepared that you know that you can spend a lot of time on several prototypes and nothing comes about from them. But from a few of those prototypes, you can get something major. So I think it's knowing that if things don't necessarily work out, that just keep going, just keep prototyping. I think that's the first thing. The second thing is, and I think this is what was really exciting that we saw at Landor was, offices, they wanted to innovate, but again, it's what's the best way? There's so much technology. Where do you start, and so forth? And I think one of the best examples I saw was in the London office. So we would typically produce PDF guidelines for our clients. And one day, we all got together and we said, right, why don't we produce this as a digital guideline? We had enough knowledge to basically, band together and make it happen. That innovation actually came from pure passion, as opposed to we have to do this. It's like we wanted to do this, seeing the end result, we look, there's a lot of hours put into it, a lot of late nights and pizzas and so forth. But when we saw the end product, and we were just like, wow, this is incredible, And as a result of that, not only did we, essentially create a new revenue stream, if you like, but it kind of provided the platform for future innovation. So now we're, partnering up in WPP with, for instance, with Hogarth, one of the agencies, so that when we get any future requirements from major clients that, they need us to build a guideline for company 10,000, 100,000 employees, we can, from all the learnings that we have, we can brief our partner more clearly because we've done it ourselves.
Let's talk about data for a little bit. Sure. You obviously dealt with a lot of data, a ton of data, globally. Were there regional differences, particularly perhaps between the Americas and Europe, given the GDPR, privacy, all of that? Any of those sort of roadblocks that you had to work around to have that global approach?
There were certainly roadblocks, but I think what really helped is, we made sure that there was a select individual in each office taking care of the data that is storing, so making sure that they review the contracts, make sure that they know where the data is, and also working with the WPP to ensure that we are compliant. So WPP have a dedicated person on GDPR, Vicky. She's a chief data officer, and there were certainly challenges, but we made sure we followed all the. In terms of how it affected our creativity, I'd say it didn't really affect it that much. In that, if anything, I think especially changes in GDPR and so forth, I think it was necessary, and I think, if anything, it provides more opportunities in the marketplace for vendors to kind of consult on data, because ultimately, and especially after the Cambridge Analytica scandal, people are more interested in, they want to know what's happening to their data. Absolutely. And so definitely, we've done a lot of work to make sure that we are compliant, and on top of things.
You're an innovator and a techie at heart. Are there any technologies right now that excite you, and are there any that you see coming down the road that will be significant game changers?
Sure. Definitely, I know there's a lot of talk around artificial intelligence and so forth, and I think that's definitely going to change a lot of things in terms of automating workloads and getting rid of the kind of boring, repetitive day-to-day tasks that people do. But actually one that I'm really interested in, and one that I think is not talked about as much but necessary, is microservices and APIs. Mm-hmm. So if you take a look at chiefmartech.com, you'll see now there's over 7,000 vendors.
Something like 6,800, 7,000. Yeah.
Exactly, in the marketing and advertising space. Loads and loads of solutions, and the way that we're seeing things work more now is, we're going from a traditional in-house IT to leveraging multiple, SaaS solutions. Mm-hmm. And by using APIs and microservices, it can enable you to essentially join up all the data from all the different systems and look at things like algorithms and patterns, and potentially even provide new services, or think, how can we make better decisions around this data? And also by utilizing APIs and microservices, again, it can help to automate a lot of the tasks they do. For instance, Landor has a consumer-facing website, Landor.com. Mm-hmm. Potential customer makes an inquiry. That data, then we'll push it to our CRM solution. Then, if we want to send them an email, we'll send it via Campaign Monitor. But we're not re-entering that data 3 times over. Right. It's just one whole succinct process. Yeah. So definitely, and I think we'll see more of APIs being leveraged in the marketplace. In fact, I know we're looking into one called Zapier, for instance, mm-hmm. which means that we don't need to build them all ourselves, that we can just essentially just sign up, and it just makes it a lot easier to do. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for being here. Pleasure. My guest today has been Tansel Adacan, Global Systems Director at Landor. Thank you again. Pleasure.